Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, a very special day for me. I've got a picture of my mentor, Bob O'Connor. I'm just going to tell a very quick story about Bob and why today is a special day. I started my business in Calgary, where I am right now, in 1987. I started with a workshop called Starting Successful Business, so yeah, you do the math, and it's 30 years that I've been a trainer, and I think I've even got more passion for it today than I had there earlier, or sorry, even then. I wrote a workshop called Starting a Successful Business, and I traveled across Canada, eventually to 153 different cities, teaching people how to start a business for a living. It was a lot of fun. People came and they would talk about whatever business they were going to start, and they were excited and motivated and such. And now it's all I do is management training, not starting anymore. And the difference is when people are starting, they've got huge enthusiasm and excitement, and they can't wait to start their business, and they're going to make nothing but money, and they think they're going to work less and make more. And I'd ask people at the beginning of the class, why are you here? I've done some research. Back in the day, only 3% of Canadians were self-employed. It's very similar to that in the US. And actually, if you Google it, which I have, the national or the international rate of self-employment around the world is about 3%. So only about 3% of the population is self-employed. 97% of people work for everybody else, and which is fine. Not everybody's cut out or crazy enough to run a business. But I'd ask people, why are you one of the 3%? Why are you a person who wants to start their own business when only 3% of the population does it? And they say, well, I want to be my own boss. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I want to go in when I want. I want to leave when I want. I want to take my vacations and holidays when I want. And I want to make a lot of money. And my job was for the, excuse me, I'm seeing a message here, is you want a job at the federal government, not running your own business. When you're self-employed, you only have to work half a day, and 12 hours a day is a half a day. Anyway, so I'm going to date myself a little bit. Before that, I was a service advisor in Calgary in 1978, 79, and 80. It was a Texaco gas station, which we haven't had Texaco in Canada in who knows how many years, so I'm dating myself there. I remember gas was 16.7 cents a liter. Today in Calgary, it's 84. So that back in the day was about 60 cents US, something like that. And now it's almost $4, I guess. Anyway, I wrote service. We worked on things like Gremlins and Pacers and Pintos, and it was an interesting time to be in the automotive industry. But the oil industry was booming in 1980, and I got out of the automotive industry, went into the oil industry as a computer operator, and the grass was greener but turned brown really fast. The oil industry took a dive. I went to work for the Calgary Board of Education in their computer department, and I'd never seen so many people do so little work for so much money so slowly with so much complaint in my life, and I couldn't deal with it. I just did not fit into that environment, being an entrepreneur and working in this government situation. And so I spent time there when I was a computer operator. Oftentimes the computers run themselves. This is the days before PCs, but I had access to some great computer equipment, and I wrote a workshop called Starting a Successful Business in 1987. I started with that. In 1992, somewhere in there, I received a phone call from the University College of the Fraser Valley in British Columbia asking if I could do management training for the automotive industry. And they had put together an 80-hour course, and it was specifically for automotive. And one of the trainers was the gentleman that you see on the screen named Bob O'Connor. And I never met him initially because the 80-hour session would be 1 or 2 nights a week for months. So I'd be maybe the second trainer in, and then he'd be there 3 or 4 weeks later or something. But I'd heard of Bob, great things about Bob, and I would tell people that when Bob's coming, you're going to see some standing ovation material. And then I finally got to meet Bob, and he was looking for a trainer to replace him, and he would tell you that he handpicked me. And a bit intimidating. Bob, if you know Bob, knew Bob, he's passed away. He said it the way it is. You never wondered, I wonder what Bob meant when he said that. I was here in Calgary watching him teach a technician time management class, and he was talking about how that a technician could be slow. And he said, you ever have a technician that's slower than snot? And I thought, oh, Okay, that's interesting. And then another time I heard him saying, well, have you ever had a technician slower than dog snot? So I said, Bob, I got to know from you, if I'm going to teach this, is human snot slower than dog snot, or is dog snot slower than human snot? But that's just the way he was. And anyway, he went on to teach me a lot of his material. I traveled across the country with him, got to know him really well. And yeah, he could be very belligerent, hard to deal with, but he was also a very big teddy bear. And he passed away about 4 years ago. I knew he was sick. I went down to Seattle and I spent a week in his home with him and his wife, Linda. He had his hospital bed in the living room, and his son, Robert Jr. there, and John, and I got to spend a huge amount of time with him during that last week. He was a diehard entrepreneur till to the end. Even that last week, he was sitting down with his laptop trying to write a new workshop. Anyway, I said, Bob, I'm writing a book, and I would like you to write the foreword for the book. He said, I don't know if I'm qualified to do that. And I said, I don't know anybody who's more qualified than you are. And so he dictated the, sorry, just a little emotional. He dictated the foreword to the book literally on his hospital bed. I spent the week with him, and then I came back and he passed away 3-4 days later, and I went back down and spoke at his funeral. So anyway, what's significant about this is he was the one that chose me to learn his material. He said he handpicked me and said at one point he couldn't have handpicked somebody better, so that was really neat. He saw me do some sessions, a few in Las Vegas that I was doing, and he dubbed me the Enter Trainer. And he liked the fact that I had the ability to add comedy to the workshop and make it fun. And when you're teaching somebody for sometimes 5 days in a row, you need to be able to grab people's attention and keep their attention. And anyway, when he was 55, we were heading to Atlanta, and it was Bob's 55th birthday. We were having a meeting with a large parts company in Atlanta, and it was his 55th birthday. He called it his double nickel, and we went out for dinner and celebrated his 55th birthday. And today's my 55th birthday, so that's kind of an ironic thing. And also, when I took over his first management group, it was on my birthday, and it was in British Columbia, Canada, years and years ago. And so I just thought it would be neat to do this workshop today, kind of in memory of Bob. Bob did a few things. He owned repair shops in the day. He worked in dealerships, and he was very much instrumental in bringing management training to independent repair shops. The training in those days was primarily for dealerships, and he was able to bring information to the independents that we absolutely needed. And I would travel with him, and we would teach a 2-day time management class, and a month later we would teach service advisor classes for 2 days, and then a month later we would go back and teach 2 days of financial management, and then 2 days of employee management. And some of you have taken that complete 8-day series even 20 some years ago. And I can tell you that the most important information of all that he covered, and he knew it, and I certainly know it after 30 years, know it really, really well, and that is, it's more about time management than anything. The other thing that Bob did is he ran management groups, and management groups were groups of people who owned shops who would gather together and have meetings and would share financial data and marketing. And I took over, like I said, his group in Vancouver, and we'd have lots of conversations, Bob and I. When we were on that Atlanta trip, we were talking about implementation. And I've always said that training does not increase the success of your business. Implementation of the training increases the success of your business. We would have several people come to a class, and I would go back, some of you know it well, and I'd say, what did you do differently? What have you done differently since we were here a month ago? And instead of getting right into the new material, I started off saying, what have you done? And some people would have a list of the things they would do. I increased my labor rate, and I increased my parts gross profit. I put in a time clock. I'm monitoring productivity and efficiency. And I'd be just blown away by the changes they'd make. And then somebody else would say, well, I'm fixing to do this and I'm fixing to do that. And, you know, I got thinking about it recently that implementation is not something that everybody's good at just from training. But Bob and I discussed that in a management group is where the absolute best implementation is, because you can say to yourself, I'm going to go back and increase my labor rate $10 an hour, but if you don't, who's going to hold you accountable? But when you're in a management group and you say, I'm going to go back $10 an hour, you're going to get found out, if you haven't, people will end up phoning your shop or having somebody phone your shop and ask what the labor rate is. And if it hasn't increased, they're going to ask to talk to you. They're going to say, what the heck are you doing? You said you're going to go up 10, or, you know, they'd call and get a price and think, well, you're not using the parts matrix on that, are you? You said you're going to start using the parts matrix. And so it's holding people accountable, and it works really well. Just recently, this past week, I received an email from a fellow that I've only met once. He took some training of mine in Ontario, Canada, about a year ago. And he sent me an email and asked about some more training. And I said, well, what have you done? And he said, you know, not much. He said, I'm so frustrated. I've been in business almost 30 years, and this is March, and I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to pay my credit card bill from January. And I thought, here's a guy that has worked hard his entire career, and yet he's never really made many changes. And he said, change is hard for me. There's another fellow, actually probably on this call as well, that has taken probably more training from me than anybody else. The challenge is the implementation. And to come back and take more and more and more training isn't such a bad thing, but it's about accountability. And it's kind of interesting. I used to write a magazine article for, a Canadian Technician magazine, and I would write monthly, and it went on for 80 weeks, 80 articles over 8 years. And I just lost my train of thought there. Somebody just sent me a message and I got distracted. Somebody just sent me
multiple training, and then the implementation of the whole thing.
Yeah. So I got to read this. Somebody said, I took many courses with Bob as well as Warren Jones with Arlo, which was Bob's company. The most excellent courses I've ever taken. Thank you. The material works. There's no question about it. And for me, it's neat to see people 20 years later that are doing extremely well in business. Recently, I was in Ontario, and there's a fellow that was in my class that took training 20 years ago, and I am starting to feel old because I've had many people over the years now say, my dad took your training in the 80s. Oh, okay, thanks, or the 90s, I should say. But to see the material that it works, and you can go to a class and it all sounds good, but does it work? And the bottom line is the stuff works, and that's why I get so excited about it. Anyway, implementation is absolutely the key, is to go back and make changes, because just going to training and not making any changes, it's frustrating. I've had some people say, you know what, I remember that from last time. We know that. Okay, well then, are you doing it? No. Well, it's better to not know it and not do it than to know it and not do it. And sometimes we just need that kick in the pants, and that's what I really like about management groups. And that's what Bob brought to the independent automotive industry, was management groups. I believe he was the first one that ever did it. I'm not absolutely positive about that in the US. Certainly we didn't have it in Canada except for the dealership environment. And so kudos to Bob for allowing people to be better implementers by actually having management groups. As I mentioned in the email that I sent out to you, there's two things. There's two things that I've learned that are the most important things that allow you to be hugely successful. And by that I mean huge dollars. I see people that consistently do $40,000 a month, $45,000 a month. I did ask you for your labor rates earlier because I'm going to use some real numbers in there. The labor rates that I was using in that email that I sent you, up to 45,000. That's not necessarily achievable for everybody, depending on your labor rate and your effective labor rate. So I didn't mean to exaggerate that part, but you can consistently do $35,000, $40,000 a month. Occasionally, I've seen people who have actually been able to do $50,000 a month. So I want to go through some material with you. Just to let you know, I'm going to be sending you the email link to this presentation, and you're going to be able to watch it again and again, and I can even show you how that you can, so I'm just going to switch the screen here, how that you can, excuse me, I'm just having to clear my throat and take a bit of a sip of water here. When it comes to financial management, the two things that we learn very clearly is if you're going to run a truly successful shop and consistently do amazing numbers, there's two things about those people. One is they know their numbers, they're on their numbers, and two is they're in management groups. And I've seen people, for example, recently in British Columbia, I was contacted by a fellow who had been a technician at a repair shop for over 30 years. And he was injured. His shoulder got messed up and he wasn't able to be a technician anymore. And so he contacted me. He'd read my articles over the years and he said, Kelly, can you help retrain me to be a manager in the automotive industry? And I said, certainly. So I put together a course called The Blueprint for Success. I did 3 days of on-site training with him. I gave him access to all of my online webinars, and we did 2 days of on-site work where we went out to shops. And the first shop that we went to, I was kind of embarrassed for them. But they had volunteered for us to spend a day there. So I certainly wasn't going to pick apart their business. It's not like I was there to do an on-site evaluation, but I was recommended to go there by one of my clients, and he said, yeah, they'd love to have you for the day. And we got there, and I was watching how they were doing things. I looked at their financial data on their computer. Their labor gross profit was in the 60s. Their parts gross profit was, depending on which month, 38 to 42%. I watched him as he priced jobs, and it wasn't his fault. His dad had bought software. It was Gemcar software, which I personally think is the best, but his dad didn't teach him how to use it. And Kevin's on the line, and Kevin is the main trainer for Gemcar, and I'm going to have him introduce himself here shortly. And his dad never showed him how to use it. So he was defaulting everything to List, and he was selling List. And I kind of doubt there's anybody on this call that's using List Price for parts, but the bottom line is don't use List. And so I thought this isn't a very good example. Their labor gross profit was really bad. They were selling less than 4 hours a day per technician, and I wanted to see something better. And so we left that shop early. And I called the other shops that I was planning to see the next day and said, could we come today? And I don't exaggerate things, Kevin, you know me well. I don't like exaggerating. You're not going to hear me say always this and never that and nobody does this. And a lot of politicians say everybody's this and nobody's that and everybody knows this. No, that's not true. But these shops were doing phenomenal numbers. And some of them I knew from the management group that I took over for Bob back in the 90s. So we went to totally different environments. The first shop we went to, a guy named Scott, and I don't make stuff up, he did almost $53,000 per tech last July. And I was blown away. Now I'm thinking, you know, it was his best month. It wasn't his average month by any stretch. His average was between 45 and 48,000 a month, which is phenomenal. And that particular month, I'm thinking maybe there was some work held over from June, you know, some work that got done, maybe most of it done in June and finished it up in July or whatever, but he did phenomenal numbers. And I was impressed that he shut down his shop for a few days and sent all of his employees down to SEMA in Las Vegas as a reward for how well they had done as a team. And he definitely has a team. But I was looking at how he runs his operation, and I look on a whiteboard in his boardroom, and on the wall there was a whiteboard, and it said productivity percentage, efficiency percentage, proficiency percentage for the day and the month and the previous month. And I was blown away by that, and because he learned that stuff back in the early 90s. We went out to another shop, a guy named Russ. He was also in the same management group back in the 90s, does phenomenal numbers. Not quite as good as Scott. Scott's the king, but he does really good numbers. And I was in his office, and here's this whiteboard that had productivity, efficiency, proficiency numbers. We went to another shop, and again, a shop that does unbelievably well, one of the most beautiful shops I've ever been in my life. And I was blown away by that. And here's a whiteboard, productivity, efficiency, and proficiency. And we went to yet another shop that mainly does fleets, and they had the same thing. And they're all in the same management group, so you see that one from another. But to see people tracking those numbers for 20 years, and you see the numbers that they're doing, you know that it works, because nothing impacts your profitability more so than productivity and efficiency. So I want to go through this short little PowerPoint presentation with you. And I think a good analogy for me to use here is a GPS. A GPS in our car or our phone does three things for us. It will tell us where we are, and you know, maybe you're at home and you know where you're at, you know the address where you're at, but trust me, when you're from a little town of Cochrane and you go to any big US city and you think, where am I? It's nice to have the GPS tell you where you're at. And then you tell the GPS where you want to go, and then it shows you the direction, and you follow the directions, and you get from where you're at to where you need to be. And yet there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that really don't know where they're at. And at this point, I'm going to introduce Kevin King. Kevin King and I go back a couple of years now. I was looking for a coach to help me coach management groups. I wanted it to be 2 coaches. I did not want to be a one-man show. And Kevin, I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. He traveled with me just recently to Ottawa, Ontario. A couple of people on the line, you were in this session with us, and you saw that he brings expertise to the industry that I don't have. He's got an extensive background. And so I'm going to have Kevin introduce himself. And Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just talking about that shop, you don't need to say the name of the shop or the training company, but whenever I hear somebody that took training from one of those 2 major companies and how much people pay, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'll let you talk, Kevin. Kevin King.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Do you want me to just speak quickly about who I am and where I come from, my background? Okay, great. So for myself, hello everybody, I'm Kevin King. I am the trainer in the U.S. market for all the U.S. for GemCar repair shop management software. This is not a commercial for GemCar, but just to explain what I do. I work with shops every day. I help train them, implement, and initiate actions to help them be more profitable. So I come from the parts background. I'm fully vested in the automotive industry. I started right out of high school working at an independent jobber, got bought up, consumed through all the acquisitions up to some of the larger players. So if I haven't worked for them, I certainly have left employment to avoid acquisition from different companies. I also have written service in mechanical shops for using pretty much all the major softwares that were out there. I also have an extensive body shop background. I was a paint rep going around to collision facilities selling automotive finishes, abrasives, sealants. I had the fortune to be trained highly by some of the major paint companies and the best practices for labor efficiency. So I come from a supply side, but also with the understanding that my parts go with your labor, and therefore it's a revenue stream. So I understand the supply chain really well. That's really my background. And in the early 90s, late 80s, I had the fortune to just be at the right place at the right time. Technology was starting to come into mechanical shops for writing estimates, to be able to be electronically connected to parts stores, to be able to look up your own parts and make your own quotations. And so technology kind of came along with my job and what I did, and I found little by little that I really enjoyed that. And hence, that's where I've grown and developed, been able to make some choices to be where I am now, doing training with GemCar and the implementing repair shop management software and helping people analyze their numbers and profitability. So early on, I guess I didn't realize how much of a passion I would have for it, but it is my passion. It is definitely something, I don't even know how to describe it to you. It's like the old man you see across the street that seals his driveway every year, and you just say, how does he do that every year consistently? And he's like smiling out there. That's me. If we're talking about the stuff that Kelly's teaching, my world lights up. Kelly and I, we get sucked into talking to each other, and he's kind enough to say that I inspire him, but every time we get together and we're sharing an idea, we're walking through something, just to have the different angles that we come from, it's unbelievable how we push each other just one level and we take it up another notch and another notch, because the tools and stuff that he has learned over his lifetime, and to me, I'm just so excited to be part of this operation and helping move forward, and excited to meet everybody and share the ideas and my experience of what I have. So Kelly, I don't want to keep going on about myself, but I'm happy to be here and be part of the team to help implement some of the teachings and all the tools that over 30 years that you've forgotten about, found, re-implemented, and still are timeless and are applicable to today's market. So
okay, just a brief
really
thing
to be part of it.
About the training that you were talking to somebody about last week. And I'm not trying to run down a training company, because what they do helps people, but when you told me,
thank you for reminding me.
Sorry, go ahead.
And so I've got several customers, but one specifically that he took on software because he needed to move from a QuickBooks type program into a management program to be able to manage his numbers. And I didn't know his motivation at the time, but as I helped him move forward and I was training him and we're going through it, come to find out that some of these courses and trainings he's got a commitment for a couple of years to the song of $300 a week, not a month, but a week. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, boy, I just wish I had met you a little bit earlier. All the stuff you're teaching me, they're showing me. I've got to go there. I have to travel. He was gone for 8 days, so it interrupted our training of implementing the software. And I'm like, what are you doing for 8 days that you can be away from your business? How are you doing that? You don't have a service advice? Oh, I shut down. I move. And I said, and you still make payments to the management company that's teaching you to help you implement. And then Kelly and I were just talking about it, like, Kelly, there's a better way, right? I mean, there's webinars, there's technology, there's ways that we can be together as a group and as a team where you don't have to get out of your system. So he had an upfront cost and he financed it and he's involved and he has a couple of year commitment at $300 a week. And I didn't carry the math all the way out, but I think everybody here knows their numbers. So I just think there's a better way that we can affordably deliver and elevate the industry and share the practices that we know and the things, fix the labor leaks, and help people move forward. It's like the gym membership. Kelly, did you want me to get into more specifics?
No, that's good. That's good. Thank you very much.
Okay,
a little later on, I'm going to get you to do the algorithmic calculator. For those of you that have taken training from me over the years, I've been focused on Canada for the last 3 years, so I haven't been in the U.S. for a while, and I've since developed an algorithmic calculator. So I just want to go through just a little bit of two things. One is financial management. The biggest difference between shops that do extremely well and shops that don't do extremely well, two big differences. One, they know the numbers, they're on their game. And number two is they're usually in a management group and getting help from one another. I was writing all those articles, as I mentioned, over the years, and somebody wrote to the editor of the magazine, Canadian Technician, Alan Jansen, who's a great editor, great guy, great friend of mine. And he said, you know, if somebody needs those articles from Kelly, they should have never started the business in the first place. And I read that and I thought, huh. He thinks that when you start your business, everything you need to know, you know. And there's a saying I like to use that running a repair shop is really quite simple. All you need to do is buy some parts and install them for more than what you paid for them. That's all there is to it, really, except for a few thousand details. And it's those few thousand details that get you bogged down. And I needed to respond to that, I felt. And my response was, every professional athlete needs a coach. It doesn't matter how good you get, you need a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. Phelps, best swimmer in the world, has a coach. I don't think we get to a point where we can be a one-man show or one-woman show. We need assistance along the way. And to do it as a team, you know, that expression team, together everyone achieves more. And we don't have it all together. None of us have it all together, but collectively. And as it said in the email that I sent to you, I have taught a lot in my life and I've learned a lot and I keep on learning, and I watch TED Talks online. If you don't know TED Talks, search TED Talks and you can get addicted to them. They're all 15, 20-minute talks and everything imaginable, I should say, marketing and financial management somewhat, and issues. It's just incredible stuff, and learning and reading and always learning. And we never get to a point where we know it all. And what I've learned is that some people are hardworking and not doing great, and there's other people that are working hard, yes, but it's work hard, play hard. Another analogy, there's a fellow that I know in Alberta. I won't mention his name, but he owns a repair shop, and he was doing okay, not great, just doing okay. And I've known him for 20-some years. And I wasn't doing training in the city, so he wasn't a customer of mine. Actually, I was a customer of his. And he thought he was doing good, but I encouraged him to go to a management group, not mine, a different one. And he went to this management group in Calgary. And I went in to see him the next day, and he told me the story. He said, I went to that meeting, and he said, I don't know it. He said, I thought at the beginning, why am I even here? Because there's the poster child, the guy that's the best of the best, the one that people talk about and magazines write articles about, and he's the shop of the year and the tech of the year, and he's the star performer. And he said, I went there, and in management groups we share financial information. And he said, I was a guest, so I wasn't showing my numbers, but he said, I look up and I see this guy's numbers and thought, sales aren't much better than mine. His labor rate's about the same as mine. Parts gross profit, a couple percent more, but not much. He said, I'm looking at that thinking, I'm not going to tell people, but I'm doing as well as that guy, and this is my first meeting. He said, my peacock feathers were out there, and I was just, he said, I could have been arrogant, but I just sat there quiet and thought, I'm not going to tell them because they're going to, they're going to think I'm being arrogant. But he just thought, I don't really need this. This is really not for me. He said, I'm looking at the other numbers, and his average hours per repair order are kind of similar. And he said, yep, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm doing as good as him. He said until they scrolled down on the composite, and they all of a sudden saw that this guy that was there had 2 technicians, and he had 5. And here's a guy doing the same numbers almost with 5 technicians as somebody with 2. And with 5 technicians, you can't have 1 advisor. You need at least 2. And with 2 techs, 1 advisor works well. And I'd rather do it with 2 techs and make the same that you can with 5. And I suspect there's people on this line that you've had employees and maybe a tech quit or fired them and you don't replace them right away. And then a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, you think, oh, okay, the numbers haven't really gone down. So 2 things. 1, financial management, and I want to go through some financial management information with you. And then I want to talk about what a management group is about and why it's so beneficial and why I think people implement much better in management groups. And again, I learned that from my friend Bob O'Connor. The GPS, which I've talked about, GPS shows you 3 things. Shows you where you are. Number 2, actually, you tell it where you want to be, and shows you step by step. And Kevin, I don't need to get you to reiterate, but you and I have talked about how many shops that you start to talk about or talk with, and they don't know where they're at. They don't know what their sales are per tech. They don't know what their effective labor rate is. They don't know what their hours per repair order are. I've been in classes where I've asked people, what's your parts gross profit? They don't really track that. I had a fellow who had been in the business for over 30 years, and I asked him about his parts gross profit percentage, and he said, I'm really not tracking that yet. And I thought, yeah, you've been this 30 years. And that same session, by the way, there was another fellow who was a younger guy, I'm thinking late 30s, maybe early 40s, and he had 5 repair shops. And you need to know what you're doing. There's somebody on this line who just opened up their 2nd shop. I have to ask you about sleeping in the sauna, by the way, what all that means. The email I got from you, but it must be pretty tired if you go back after work and fall asleep in your sauna. But this guy had 5 shops, and he knew what his parts gross profit was. He had a composite. He compared information. And I thought, here's a young guy who figured it out really quickly, and here's an older guy that just has, it's really been a career for him, but it's been more of a hobby. I think there's 3 ways to run your business. You can run it as a hobby, you can run it as a charity, or you can run it as a business, and it definitely is a business. So 3 things that you need to know about your business. Where are you? And I suspect most people listening to this are really good at knowing where you're at. We're going to cover some of the areas where we believe that you should be. Some of you are very familiar with this. And more importantly, step by step on how you need to get there. The you are here, I'll go back to this one. I saw this online, you are here. That's a pretty big picture when you're looking at the universe there. It's not good enough just to know you are here. This one I thought was really cute. This is not where you want to be. These 2 mice looking up, and you are here in the belly of the snake. Sometimes I'm thinking in business you could feel like that's where you are. If you are here and you're standing right in front of it, that's probably too close. It's a matter of figuring out where you're at. And whenever you walk into a large mall that you've never been to before, or you go to a huge airport you've never been to before, you need to look at the map, and the first thing you want to see is you are here. And once you figure that you're there, then you can see the store you want to go to, or the gate that you want to go to, where your flight's going from, and then you can see how you can get from where you're at to where you need to be. So I want to challenge you. Do you know where you're at? And how many areas do you know where you're at? I'm going to show you the minimum, and then I'm going to show you maybe it seems overkill. I don't know. Some of you are already tracking these numbers. I'm not saying some people aren't. Some people are using the same spreadsheet that I'm going to be showing you, but it's important to know exactly where you're at. I want to show you a few different spreadsheets, and I want to show you what I believe is the minimum amount that you should see. And I switch between screens here because I'm working with dual monitors. And for those of you, by the way, have never worked with dual monitors, my friend Kevin online here said, Kelly, once you use dual monitors, you'll never go back. And Kevin, you are absolutely correct. I love my dual monitor, but it takes some getting used to when you're doing a webinar and trying to figure out which screen is being shown. This is what I consider to be the minimum amount that you need to know every single month about your business. It's called ISAT, or Income Statement Analysis Tool, and I do suggest that you do this every single month. After the session, I'm sending you a link so that you can watch this online. I am going to send you a short little webinar that I put together on how to download webinars to your computer. Some of you know how to do that, some of you don't. I just learned a few months ago, and so that when you take webinars, you can download them to your computer, anything on YouTube actually, and other things as well, and you can download it to your computer so you can watch it whenever you want. Key says, I've done it all 3 years. So back to this, we've got Income Statement Analysis Tool. And these are the things, and by the way, you can do this in 5 or 10 minutes a month, depending on where you're getting the information from. Some of it might have to come from your shop management system. Some of it might come from QuickBooks or whatever you're using for your bookkeeping. But you can do this pretty quick. And I'm going to suggest that you don't do the expense part initially, that you simply do the sales and the cost of goods sold. So we've got the labor sales. This is a real shop, just so you know. It's a one-person shop. $10,160 in labor, $12,000 in parts. The first thing I look at, and the first thing I think you should look at when you look at your income statement and you're looking at it differently maybe than you have before, the most important number to me when I look at a statement, I wouldn't say the most important number of all, but one thing that's glaring on an income statement is labor versus part sales. And I've run management groups. I ran management groups for Worldpac in the US, and I'm really happy about that because I ran those groups, and if you look online, the Northwest group still exists, the North California group still exists. Somebody is online, I don't know if you're still in the Northwest group, but that Northwest group still exists, and the one in Denver still exists, and you need to really know your numbers. And when I ran management groups here in Canada, the same thing I would look at is labor sales versus part sales. And if your labor sales are less than your part sales, you've got a big problem, and that needs to be fixed. Because if you're not selling the labor, you're not selling everything else that goes along with that. And I assure you, once you learn how to sell the labor, to get from 5 hours a day to 6 hours a day to 7 hours a day to 8 hours a day, maybe 9 hours a day. I've got somebody in this line I know that you sell an average of 9 to 11 hours a day. That's rare, but it certainly can be done. But when you're not selling the labor, then you're not selling everything else to go along with it. So when I look at a set of financial statements for the first time, never seen them before, I look at labor and part sales. And I can tell you, in the management groups that I ran in Canada, literally from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland, and I don't exaggerate that, all across the country, I'm thinking maybe a dozen groups over a period of time, and 100% of the shops that joined our group had higher part sales than labor sales. And you think about that, labor is the most profitable thing that you sell, or at least should be 70, 75% GP, and parts should be about 50. So labor is a higher gross profit than parts. However, a lot of people see more money from parts than they do from labor. The other question to ask yourself is, how often do you sell parts without labor? How often do people come into your shop and buy belts and water pumps and hoses and starters and alternators? They just don't. But how often do you sell labor without parts? And that happens quite frequently. So if your labor sales are less than your part sales, that's a big problem. Not too difficult to fix, but you need to get focused on selling the labor inventory. Anyway, this is a real shop. For yourself, all you need to do is fill in the information here for your labor, your parts, your sublet, your tires, your shop supplies, and then all you need to do is fill in your cost of goods sold. To be clear, with labor, that's technicians only. It does not include service advisors, etc. The shop actually doesn't have an advisor. The part sales, the sublet, the tires, not much in tires. And then it automatically calculates your gross profit. Labor gross profit 62%, parts is 40, that sucks. Sublets 20, that sucks. Tires 30%, actually that's pretty good. This person might just want to get into the tire business and hit the gross profit benchmark for tires. Shop supplies, you don't have to track costs for shop supplies. You'd have to break it down from your part vendor, and that wasn't really a part, that was a shop supply. I don't think it's worth it. I think it's a bit micromanagement. It's great if you can do it, but if you don't want to take the time and it shows 100% GP, that's fine. All you need to fill in is the labor rate, 105, one technician, 60 repair orders, 20 days a month, 8 hours a day. It calculates for us the key performance indicators. And these are the things that you minimum need to know every single month, minimum. Your overall gross profit on labor, the shop's at 47%. That's terrible. Should be at least, overall GP, 60, 13% low there. Gross profit on labor, 62. Our benchmark for training purposes is 70%. In our management groups, we want to see 75. So this shop is 8% low for training purposes and 13% low for management group. Parts GP is 40. The benchmark for training, 45. The benchmark for groups is 50. And again, I'm sending you the spreadsheet, minus 5% there. The biggest problem at the shop, without a doubt, is right there, labor mix. Only 38% of the money that came in the door came from labor. Everything else made up the rest of it. That's a huge problem. That is a shop that's not focused on selling the labor. We've got the benchmark, that's 50, and our management groups is 55, and so he's 12 to 17% low there. Hourly revenue, that's everything combined, not too bad. Could have done 16,800, only did 10,000, so only sold 60% of the time. And I can tell you, this is not an exception, this is the rule. Most shops sell between 45 and 55% of their labor. The shop is actually not doing too bad. They're selling 60% of it. Our goal is that you sell 112% of your time, and we're going to show you how that's done. So what would I want to fix at the shop? Let's fix the labor leak. A quick illustration, and for those of you that know me well, you've heard this a lot, bear with me. Some people are hearing this for the first time. But think about it this way. If you bought 8 spark plugs in the morning and they were dropped off at your shop and you counted them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that day 4 were installed in a car and the other 4 were gone at the end of the day, you'd wonder where they went. The next day you get 8 tires and they're dropped off at your shop at 8 o'clock in the morning and you count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 are installed in a car. At the end of the day they're gone. You wonder where they went. Well, how long would it take the average owner to freak out to find out where the plugs or tires are going, day 1 or day 2? It'd be day 1. We bought 8, we sold 4, where are they? But we'll buy 8 hours at a time and sell 4 or 5 and not wonder what happened to the other 4 or the other 3. So labor is, without a doubt, the most important thing for you to do is to make sure the labor is being sold. His average invoice is actually not too bad. 3 invoices a day, 3 cars a day, 1.6 hours per repair order. Net operating profit is doing quite well there. So again, I'm going to be sending you that spreadsheet, but I want to show you another tool. And for those of you that have seen this before, you're going to go, oh, he's showing this again. And when Kevin and I were doing this earlier today, I found another use for this exact same tool. And I call it the power of team. And I want to show you something different with this. I've worked with the spreadsheet. Kevin was demonstrating something on the spreadsheet a while ago, and as I was watching him do it, I thought, oh, there's another thing I never thought of before. And then today I found 2 new things with the spreadsheet. Your shop can operate an average shop, an above average shop, or an awesome shop, or what I would call a person who's really taken a lot of training here, and a person who here has, excuse me, my throat is not good today. The average technician is at a shop 168 hours. And Susan, I believe you're online, and I'm going to unmute your microphone. You told me something just recently about effective labor rate, which is my most important calculation. And you mentioned to me that that's when you started being profitable. So I'm hoping you're online and I can get you to, I'll unmute your mic and you can tell us what impact that was. As a trainer, sometimes you don't know the things that meant the most to somebody. You know, if I'm teaching about parts GP, but you're already there, but I talk about something else. And so not everything is applicable to everybody, but everything is applicable to somebody. But the average technician is at a shop 168 hours in a month. And I'm going to go with the labor rate that I saw here, $125 an hour. Again, you're going to receive this spreadsheet as well. It's a complimentary thing I'm giving you with this workshop. And so we're at $125 there and $125 there. And productivity, I'm not going to get to this in detail, but this is how much time you spend working on cars, and efficiency is how fast you are at it. In this shop, if you're operating at this level, your tech spends 60% of the day working on stuff that makes money. They're 100% efficient. You sell 100 hours. Well, excuse me, we had 168. We shouldn't sell 100. If you bought 168 tires, you don't want to sell 100 of them. At $125 an hour, you do 12,600. And then the parts to go along with that, the total performance is 25,000. So at a labor rate of 125, you should definitely not be doing less than $25,000 per month per technician. There are some people who are actually in the below average category, but I just wanted to go with that. At a shop that's 75% productive, 125% efficient, that gives us $35,000 a month, and 168 at 125, $47,000 a month. Now, in the shop up here, in our management groups work harder on people. We're holding them a little bit more accountable, and we want to see better numbers. And these are not numbers I just pull out of the air. These are numbers I see being done. So at a shop that's doing 168 hours a month, but you can do 95% productivity. You can do 135% efficiency. That produces 215.46. And at the same labor rate of 125, that's where we see 53,000. And that shop that I mentioned to you earlier that did $53,000 last July is at 125 an hour. So I like that number for that purpose. Now, not everybody's at 125. Somebody was at 105. So all you need to do is change these numbers to where you're at. Maybe you're at 98, and you'll see where you could be at 98. And you think, oh, well, if I increase my labor rate by $2 or $5 or $10 or whatever, then it's going to show you. The point is, where are you at? Look at your numbers. Do this chart. Are you average? Are you between average and above average? Are you between above average and awesome? Or are you already at awesome? And if you're there, that's great. There are people that are there. The question is, if you're not there, how do you get there? This is GPS. I know where I'm at. You know that from your own numbers. Now you're seeing the potential where you could be. And the question is, how do you get there? Now, I want to show you something that occurred to me today. And I've said for years, and I know it to be very true, I learned it from Bob O'Connor, and I've learned it myself very well, is that I'm just going to see if Susan's on.
I am.
Okay. And you're not muted. How did you do that? Okay, let me show you something, Susan.
The power.
You've been, yeah, you do. You've been taking training from me for 20 years, something like that. And let me show you something. Here, look at this. What happens if your effective labor rate is off? Let me just give a simple number, $100 an hour. And I never thought of this, Susan, before until today. I thought, oh my God, maybe it's an effective labor rate program or problem, and I learned that from you because you went back and, okay, I shouldn't just say it that way, but you know when you were in my management group, my favorite number, effective labor rate. Let's go to page 4. Let's take a look at that line because to me, the most important calculation of them all, productivity is important, efficiency is important, but effective labor rate is what do you actually charge by the hour? I mean, do some scary math. Take how many hours you paid your techs last month, multiply that by your labor rate, and see what your sales would have been if you would have collected your full labor rate for every hour you paid your technicians. The average independent repair shop is only 67%. So look what happens if you say your labor rate's 100, but when every time you're doing an oil change, you're not collecting 100. Every time you're doing something else, you're not collecting 100. So when you've got this labor rate of $67 instead of 100, then you're now at $25,000 a month, and you're actually doing less than if you were over here. So can you just briefly talk about effective labor rate, Susan, and then I'm going to move on to a more in-depth spreadsheet.
Well, I learned when we honed in many moons ago on effective labor rate, that's when you can pay all your bills. You know what? GP on parts is really important, but everything could be paid for when you had your effective labor rate. Everything went smoothly, and that credit card got paid off, and the suppliers got paid on time, and you didn't have to worry about payroll. So it's just selling those hours that was so critical to, and that made all the difference. That's why we're still here, and that's why we have, now we just have to hone in on another shop, but it's getting that effective labor rate up. If that isn't up, then it's more important than GP on parts, I honestly believe.
I agree. There's no question, and that's why I've always felt like it was the most important calculation, and I'm going to show you a spreadsheet where that calculation is done for you. I got to ask, Susan, are you saying you're so tired you go home and fall asleep in your sauna? Is that what you meant?
I was getting there, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go back to this. Thank you, Susan. I wasn't planning to do that to Susan, but I just thought, oh my God, you must be pretty tired if you're falling asleep in your... Anyway, they just opened up a second shop, which is kind of cool. Now, this is where I wanted to take it a bit further. And thank you, Kevin. You made a comment earlier about me that I'm very creative, and I've never perceived myself to be a creative person, but I get thinking sometimes, but I'm not just the kind of person who thinks that I want to see it. And I'm not a spreadsheet guru to create these. I get people to do that for me. But I get the idea and I say, show me this, show me this. And I've shown that many times before, average, above average, and awesome, where you can be. But what I wanted to know is more detail. So here's what I wanted to show you. Your average employee is in your shop, and we have a lot of Americans online, more Americans than Canadians actually. So I'm going to keep it at 2,000. Yes.
Could you share your screen, please?
Picky, picky, picky. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I have a moderator. Available hours for an average shop in the U.S., because Americans, just for the record, work more days per year than anybody else in the entire world. In Canada, we have 2 weeks paid vacation your first year. After a couple of years, you probably get 3 weeks. Some people get 4 weeks. Got maybe 10 statutory holidays. So in Canada, within your first year, you actually are off for a total of about a month, spread out over the year. And in the U.S., you may not even get 2 years after 1 year, or 2 weeks, I should say. Anyway, so I'm going to do it with American numbers first, and then I'll bring it to some Canadian stuff. We work hard, play hard. The average technician, 50 hours a week. 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, a little bit of time off, is in your shop about 2,000 hours. At a labor rate of $112 an hour, the labor sales are $224,000. So with one tech, you should be able to do about $224 a year. The part sales to go along with that should be about $165,000, and you should be able to sell about $38,000, almost $39,000 in sublet, tires, towing, etc. Total sales per year, you should be able to do about $428,000. Then there's the cost of goods sold. And with those numbers, if you're doing, primo, I mean, we're not saying everybody's going to do that because not everybody does that. But if you were at the benchmark, you would be able to pay that technician, you probably wouldn't, but you could pay as high as $61,600 in salary. The labor gross profit, after you paid for the technician, you'd be left with $162,000. I wanted to know what the parts gross profit would be, which was $82,880. The gross profit on overall gross profit per technician should be about $245,000. Management salaries, if you're doing benchmark, you'd have about $42,000 from the sales from that technician to go towards management salary. That's only one tech, so you got two, you got 80 grand. Service advisor should be about 8% of your sales. The benchmarks are right there, $34,000. The rent, which is about 5% of the sales per technician in a month. So you got, or in a year, I should say, you got about 21 grand for rent. Marketing and advertising, you could spend about $25,000 a year for each technician in marketing to get new people in the door, etc. The total expenses would be $171,494. And the net profit per tech, that's what I wanted to know. I'm sitting in my living room one day and thought, yeah, we know what the sales should be, but what should the net profit be? And I didn't know what it was going to be. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? $85,000. What's neat about this is, let's say you wanted to hire another technician, and I'm going to bring this down into more of a Canadianized thing because we work less than that. I worked in the U.S. for 15 years, and I know what the American dream is. The American dream is to work hard to buy toys that you don't have time for because you work too much to buy them. Anyway, at the same labor rate, $112,000, we can see 1,960 hours in a year. You can see the sales that you should have per technician per year, what the gross profit should be, and then the net profit. So if you hired another technician, you'd say, okay, my sales should increase by about 219 for labor sales, part sales. That's one of the things I wanted to do, was analyze where you're at, but also what if you hired another technician. But I wanted to take it further and say, okay, we've got a shop that has, I believe it's 504 hours a year, something like that. 504 a month, sorry, 1,960. Oh, shoot. I'm just going to go 6,000. Let's go back to the American thing, okay? It's easy numbers. That would tell us the same thing. If you, let's say you've got two technicians, you wanted to bring on a third, you could use that to just add a third technician. But if you've got three techs and your labor rate's 112, your labor sales should be about 658. Your part sales should be about 487. Your sublet should be about 114,000. Maybe you'll do less of that and more of the other, whatever. You should be able to do about 1.2 million a year with three technicians. You would be able to pay 181,000 for your technicians. You'd have labor gross profit of 477,000, parts gross profit, overall gross profit. You'd have $126,000 available for management salary. I think a lot of people would want to work at that shop. You could pay a service advisor up to $100,000, not that you would. It's just showing you what the math would be. The question is, where are you going to get $240 a month? Well, to pay for something? Well, if you're doing these kind of numbers, look at what would be available to you. Some people, we can't pay people more than we just can't. We just don't have the money to, and we'd like a premier advisor, but we just can't afford them, or we don't have an advisor at all, and we think, how can we afford one? Well, when you're doing these numbers, there's a lot of money there that would be able to pay for that advisor or the equipment or whatever you're going to buy. So when you're looking at buying something, don't think about the money that you have right now. You think about more money and being able to do it from more money. I'm a political person, but I don't want to get into much politics here, but in Canada, I believe the election was won because the person who was running wanted to increase sales more so than reduce expenses, and that's exactly what I think happened in the U.S. as well. The strategy was, instead of cutting, let's get our sales up, or let's get our revenue up, or our GDP. And it's the same thing in a business. There's only 3 ways to make more money. You can increase your sales, you can increase your gross profit, or you can reduce expenses. Those are the only choices you have. Only 3 things you can do. And I find way too many people, and Kevin, you and I were in a class in Ottawa a few weeks ago, and some people are on the line from this, you were there. I was angry, I think, Kevin, is the word. I showed my emotion a little bit, but I was talking about how that we too often have small thinking and we focus on the wrong things. For example, if you are really creative and persistent and diligent and disciplined and put your paper in your fax machine or your printer backwards, which saves money, it's good for the environment, I realize, but if you're really good at that and you're always doing that, you could save $5, $10 a year at least by doing that, maybe 20. That's the focus is on the wrong thing. Yeah, you can turn off your lights at lunchtime and save some money there. But if we think we're really going to make a lot more money because we're doing this with paper, or because we're, I've seen people do crazy things to try to save money and think if you took that creativity and put it into something else. And we were talking about parts. And there was a fellow in the room who was saying, yeah, well, I phone around and I find out the best price on a part. And I said, well, that's working against you, sir. Because if you phone around and get a better price and a better price and a better price, and you buy the part from the person with the better price, who may not have the same level of service, who may not have the same level of delivery, who may not be rewarding you with a cruise or a rebate, who may not have the same quality of part, who whatever. Sometimes you sacrifice quality, service, and delivery to get a cheaper part, mark it up the same way, and make less money. And another fellow, basically took his side and said, oh yeah, he said, Kelly, today it's really easy, click, click, click. And I know what he meant, click, 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 but Kevin, you're in the software business. Is it just click, click, click?
Yeah, to look it up 3 different times, then track it, and then figure out which quote that you get it from, what site, write it down, and then you have to receive it. It's click, 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 but there's a lot more to it than that.
I had a fellow in a class one time, he said, my boss told me any part that's over $50 in those days, it was phone calls, he said, you have to phone 3 shops, 3 part stores to get the price. Anyway, that guy in the class was saying, he said one of the company, we were training in a parts vendor's parts store. We were in a training center that they have for their staff, and we were training in there upstairs of the parts store, the company that this guy was buying his parts from. And he was belligerent, I thought, or borderline, and he was complaining about their parts prices being too high. And I said, but sir, if this was another parts company, you could be saying the same thing. If it was another parts company, you could be saying the same thing, because sometimes somebody's cheaper and sometimes they're less and sometimes they're more there. It's like grocery stores. They don't have the exact same price every single day. They can't. I know a fellow who was working for a parts company in Ontario, and he was tired of people saying, well, you're too high on this and you're too high on that, and I don't buy those from you because you're too high. So what he did is he took 50 line items and he took all the prices from his own parts store, compared them to parts stores that were competitors. I think it was 3 or 4. It was a lot of work. And he said, guess what? He said, some are higher, some are lower. Yeah, that was higher. We're cheaper there. Oh, we're more expensive there. Oh, we're cheaper here, more expensive there. Could you imagine how much time you would spend, Kevin, as a parts store, if all you did is spend time, what's their part price today? What's their price? When did they change that? You'd have to know the parts prices all of the time. And he said, you know what? Some are higher, some are lower, but the bottom line, it was minuscule. If you took how much a store spent, a repair shop, from part vendors, it was almost exactly the same when you looked at the big picture. And here are these people making calls and going click, 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 and doing this and doing that. And I said, look, if this parts company increased their parts prices across the board by 10%, most of you would make more money. And if they dropped their prices across the board by 10%, most of you would make less money. Not that I'm suggesting we buy more expensive parts, that's not my point, but that's the wrong focus. If you are spending all this time trying to figure out where you can get the cheapest price. And what I've learned is it's about loyalty. I wrote an article about loyalty. Actually, Kevin, can you make a note for me to send out my 2 articles on parts pricing? What do you do when somebody says it's cheaper at the dealership? What happens when they say it's cheaper online, etc.? And I'll send those 2 articles out to you. But one of the articles was about loyalty. And I learned a long time ago about loyalty with airlines. I started to fly Delta. I love Delta till this day. They were my favorite airline. I flew Delta, I flew Delta, I flew Delta. I didn't look online to see if somebody had a cheaper price. You know, once in a while, you know, if it's only first class available on Delta, it might have made sense. But no exaggeration, 98% of my flights were Delta. I loved it, that airline, and they treated me well. They treated me really well. And let's say, I mean, I flew them over 100 flights a year because I was platinum, and you have to have platinum or elite, or what they call it, you have to have 100 flights a year, and I would hit that every year. I can tell you without exaggeration, I was in first class well over 90% of the time with them. They treated me really well. It wasn't a better price, and it's the same thing with your customers. When you've got loyal customers, don't discount to them. Treat them better. You find out who your best customers are and treat them royally. One of my favorites, I saw a shop in Minneapolis who was in our management group, and he took and got USB sticks, flash sticks, with the logo of the cars that he worked on. He worked on Mercedes, Jag, and BMW, something like that. And he had keychains that had flash sticks on them that had the logo. And if you had a Jaguar or a Mercedes-Benz or BMW, whatever, they would say, you know what, Kevin, you are in one of our top customers, and we have this flash drive here. What we've done is we've gone and saved your entire history on the drive so that if you ever go to sell your vehicle, you can show them the complete history. It's right on this flash stick. When you come in, would you like a receipt? I was at Best Buy today, and they emailed me my receipt. You don't have to have the receipt anymore. Apple does that. It makes sense, less paper. And anyway, and then they say, now we know, it was something we were teaching about loyalty, and now you've got a new technician or a new service advisor, and in comes a customer who spends huge amounts of money with you. Susan, you've gone just through another advisor at your new shop or the old shop, whatever. You've got somebody now that's new. You know your customers well, and they're used to walking in, hey Susan, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, you don't know who they are. You just took over a new shop, and people walk in, you don't know them. The last person that worked there knew them for years. You don't know who they are. You don't know how good of a customer they are, how much money they spend, how loyal they are. But when they walk in and they got a key tag that's got a VIP thing on it, you go, ah, this is one of the absolute best customers. So we treat our customers a bit better. Maybe we only have so many loaners and we give priority to our premium customers. Maybe it's our top 10% or our top 15. You have to decide what percentage that is. And don't try to discount it to them. I didn't get a better deal on airfares, but I tell you, I spent a lot of time in first class, got a lot of free food, got to go into their lounges. They put luggage tags on your luggage that says priority, which means they lose your luggage faster than anybody else's. But they treated me well, and I got a lot of, and I don't exaggerate, I had over 500,000. And I won't mention his name, but another trainer that somebody mentioned earlier that also I used to work with, he took a different approach. He wasn't loyal. He spent a little bit of money with Alaska, a little bit with United, a little bit with American, a little bit with Delta, a little bit with United, a little bit with Air Canada, a little bit with WestJet. And he phoned me one day, and he said, I have to go to Atlanta, and it's a last-minute ticket. It's really expensive. He said, do you have many Delta points? And I said, yeah, I've got over 500,000. I said, you must have lots. You fly as much as me. He said, no, I don't have quite enough. You need 25,000. I've only got 22 with these guys and 24 with them. He may have had 500,000 miles, but he truly didn't have enough to fly. And I tell you, with an airline for free, for Christmas with my family, my kids would tell you that I'd get the Christmas, take a map of the United States and Canada and say, wherever you want to go, you can go. And they would choose whatever place they wanted to go. It saved me from Christmas shopping, but they loved it. My kids got to see a lot of stuff. Why? Because of loyalty. When you're loyal to a part vendor, they're going to take better care of you. You're going to have a bigger hammer, and you want to get their attention, stop buying from them for a day or two, and it's all of a sudden it's like, what happened? You didn't order parts today. But if you buy a little bit here and a little bit there, delivery drivers know who the loyal people are. I know parts people, and I'm sure, Kevin, you've seen it, done it, where you have a customer that is so loyal to you and there's going to be a problem. You know, one of the cars, I know a part vendor in Canada, 2 vehicles were in an accident one day and deliveries was down at times, and this salesman said, I'm going to deliver parts myself, and he was taking parts to his customers in his own vehicle because they were such good customers. Anyway, the point is, be loyal, and we can treat our customers better who are loyal, and the same thing with us. But to spend time trying to find a cheaper part to mark it up the same way and make less money is absolutely crazy. Kevin, I'm just curious, do you perchance have the algorithmic calculator? You know what? That's okay. I'm going to pull it up on my computer. And if I could get you just to talk briefly about parts profit.
Sure. So one of the things, whether it be my own subscription of how I feel you need to compete in the market, and Kelly's tool that we're about to show, the algorithmic parts calculator, is that if you were to buy, all of a sudden the industry gets flooded with red wheel bearings. We'll just use that as an example. So because I work in my shop and a customer, and we're looking at pricing it, right here, this example that Kelly has created, once again, another tool that I spoke of before, that he's so generous with the stuff that he's provided over the years that he's created. If we buy something, let's just use we can use a purchase price, so we have a desired gross profit. If you'll use the tool that he's given you here, this is going to give you, at the end of the month, you're going to achieve a 50% gross profit on your parts. And we're not going to get into the difference between markup and gross profit. That's something that we'll cover on an individual basis. It's part of a couple of the webinars that we've done. But if we're looking at using this gross profit calculator and we have a red wheel bearing and we pay, let's say, between $50 and $250, Kelly, go ahead, and we'll put the purchase price at $126. Or no, I'm sorry, 50 and 250. Yeah, so 126, we buy a premium bearing. So it's going to be $126. We then would need to be able to sell it for $229.09 in order to have a 45% effective gross profit. Now, the problem with it is, if we bought that exact same wheel bearing and it was 1 penny higher or 1 penny lower, so I'm going to have to move to the next example. So maybe, I'm sorry, Kelly, maybe we'll change it from 126. Let's make that $250. Or do you want to use the low dollar sum? That would probably be better. So for $299, we would sell something for $14.95. That's going to give us an 80% gross profit. But a minute that we move over that threshold, 2 pennies difference, let's say that we're going to move to $3 and it'd have to be $3.01, correct? So here's the difference between $2.95 versus we go 1 penny, and now all of a sudden we're selling something for the 2 cents difference. You can see that we're losing $2.91 worth of profit dollars. So by an item going by 1 penny, we're going to lose $3 worth of gross profit dollars because it went 1 penny. So when Kelly designed this and he went through the whole, created this tool to help people to be profitable in the time that they were going to spend with it, the biggest thing that came from it was, you know, why would I forfeit the profit margin of 5 points or 7 points because something was 1 penny more? And a larger example of that is how many of us have been affected by red chassis coming into the marketplace or red wheel bearings coming into the marketplace. It's not good for the parts store. It's not good for the service dealer. And we think, oh, well, geez, that sounds great. That sounds like an affordable price. I mark it up my 40 points. Here's what I'm going to get. The reality of it is that your loss of gross profit dollars is going to be driven by that economy market. So if we take the exact same example and we say here in this algorithmic parts pricing that
Okay,
Kelly has.
I just want to say one thing, Kevin. The matrix works, okay, and I've taught it for years. I learned the concept from Bob O'Connor. He never did get to a point where he put it into a spreadsheet, which I did years ago, and it works. I mean, to get a higher gross profit on a lower ticket item and a lower gross profit on a higher ticket item, because a lot of people, as you know, Kevin, if they have a $300 part, they're thinking, I can't get 50. You want me to get 50 overall, but I can't get 50 on an engine. I can't get 50 on a transmission. I can't get 50 on a expensive electrical part. And it's true, you can't. But you need to get higher than 50 on the lower stuff, because if you don't, you can never get 50. If you go below 50 on higher ticket items and never go above 50 on lower ticket items, you can't get 50. It's not possible. So we developed the spreadsheet so that it would do that. But it occurred to me one day, I thought, oh, here's a challenge. 1 cent different here made a 5% difference there. Maybe we can make this even better. Now, some of you have some software in the US, I think they call it smart pricing, which is the same kind of concept, but I had a mathematician who showed it to me that it didn't really work, and I didn't understand the math behind it, but this is a true algorithmic calculator. And just so you know, in the last one, it went from 80% down to 75. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat, instead of going from 80 to 75 with a 1 cent difference, that it goes 80, 79.5, 79.0, 78.5, 78.0. I hired somebody to do the spreadsheet, and he's even more OCD than some people that I know. Bob O'Connor was like that, and he went 79.9, 79.98, 79.97. So when you see the difference between this line 13 and 14, there are thousands of calculations operating in the background. So let's go to the same example, Kevin.
Yep, so the example we had was at $3 for the purchase price. And so it would tell us in order to make the 80%, we would need to sell it for $15. If we were to convert that $3 to $3.01, we're not going to drop off and have it be lost, that there would be $15.04, and we would still achieve a 79.99%. So the difference was that this algorithmic that Kelly requested or thought through and had somebody create, just because something is 1 penny different, I shouldn't lose 5 percentage points or $4 gross profit, and it's going to help me to achieve an 80% gross profit so that at the end of the month or at the end of the year, I'm going to be achieving my goal to have a 50% GP on my parts. So the benefit of the algorithmic is that you can adapt that in your, and you know, Kelly, something we should just cover, just to do the software plug here for a second. If you feel that you have a parts matrix, and I'm going to say this unequivocally, I want to make sure that we cover this. If you have a parts matrix and you say to me, I have a parts matrix in XYZ software, I don't care if it's my software, somebody else's software, you absolutely positively do not have it unless you personally have put it in there, checked it, and verified it, and it's accurate. I'm going to use myself as an example because I think the examples always hold true if we reflect on ourselves as we go to others. I have customers that have purchased my software. Well, depending on when you bought it, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, a week ago, which parts matrix do you have? Do you have the algorithmic? Do you have the standard parts matrix that Kelly showed you a slide before? Or do you have the one that was built in 5 years ago when we launched GemCar? So what I'm getting at is that if you feel that you have a parts matrix, do not trust it unless you personally have done it and you're going to verify it. You're going to trust but verify. The tool, more than likely, Kelly's probably generously going to give you this tool to share it and put it on. But if you say to me that you have a parts matrix, I'm telling you right now, I want to see it. When you say that, what does that mean? Show me. Here's 4 examples I want you to go through, and I guarantee you the result is not going to be reflective of what you believe it to be. I'm including my own software in that because depending on the sales rep, the database that was installed, the time when you purchased it, the last time somebody was in there playing around, and where it is now. So if you say to me you have a parts matrix, I assure you, I have, without exception, I have not found anybody that it actually gets the result that they believe that they're going to get. So as we're going through this example, I just wanted to take that stand to say, if you're watching this and you have software, do not trust it. Somebody's been in there, and if you didn't do it and you haven't checked it in a while, here's a perfect tool to calculate that. one of the things that you're going to find is that the average parts price that you're going to be purchasing, because everybody's going to say, well, there's no way I can get 80% for a $3 item. Kelly and Kevin, it's funny that they begin with K's, but there's no way that we're going to do that. But Kelly is loading right here a perfect example where your sweet spot, the target market that you're going to be at, the average item that you're going to buy is going to be in the $26 to $32 range, 26 to 34, I think. Kelly did all the analysis on that, but it's going to compete in that market. So when you're selling in that market spot or your sweet spot of where you're buying these items, they're not going to be at 80%. They're going to be at a more competitive rate that you're used to. So Kelly, is this an example that you have loaded here for $26.50?
Yes.
We're going to show an item that we're going to sell for $74.13. Did you want to go into it's $100, $112 in chassis and brake?
No, that's okay. No, I just wanted to show that a couple things that I wanted with this particular matrix was it's simpler than the last one in that you had to look down and see the price and then put it into that line. In this case, you only put it into one place, purchase price here. It tells you what the GP is going to be here. It tells you what your profit is here. The last one didn't actually show you what the profit was, and it tells you what the selling price is right there. And, you know, Howard, you're online. You went to this 36. I don't, you know, Howard, you were there. When I talked about 18, you thought, oh, my God. And then your sign comes at 18. And then it's 24, and it's 36. It's not easy to go from 12 to 24. I know that. The fear is, oh, my God, what's it going to cost me? I tell you what I've learned. And we did the math one time. If you are just not using a matrix and selling either from list or list plus or whatever, and you start to use this matrix, you should see $54,000, a lot more than putting paper in backwards, $54,000 in additional parts gross profit, not sales. I'm not talking about 54,000 in sales. I'm talking about gross profit. I know a fellow who sells software in Canada. I was in his shop, beautiful facility. He's the one that his son, was taking training, or his son was taking training from me, I should say. And he sells software. And I was showing this. He said, oh, no, we've got that in our software. We're talking about a guy who sells the stuff. I said, well, let's see your matrix. And he pulls it up. He said, oh, I didn't realize. Well, and he's looking at it thinking, oh, my God. Now, this parts GP wasn't bad. It was like 45%, but we want 50. And I saw him tweaking it. And Kevin, I'm so glad you came along and showed me this part, because I'd be teaching in a class and some people say, I already have a matrix. And I think, okay, they already have one. What's worse than not having something is thinking you have it and you don't, because you don't think you can fix it. What people mean is my software has a parts matrix capability. I know some software that defaults everything to 40. I know some software that defaults everything to 50, which isn't so bad, but when it's too much and you think, oh my God, I can't get 50 on that, I'm going to get less, which sometimes you have to do, and the next thing you know, you never go above 50, you'll never get to 50. So these tools work extremely well. You can't really build this into software. Gemcar has come up with the closest way, and I'm going to tell you, it was a mathematician who told me with the software that we're talking about in the US was something called smart pricing, is that it isn't truly algorithmic, that it really doesn't make that big of a difference, and he explained it, and again, I didn't understand it. But this is truly algorithmic. What we're doing here is instead of going from 70 or 80 to 75 and going down 5 at a time, this guy, again, went 79.99, 79.98, 79.97. We're talking thousands of calculations. Well, I don't know a shop management system that you could build this into. Gemcar, you've done something I think is pretty cool. Can you just explain it just briefly, because people can get the idea of the closest you can get without using this? Can you explain that, Kevin?
So basically, we took the quantifier of the sales price in a category and calculated it based on the margin. And then in addition to that, we have an additional margin that you can apply. So we've compensated for the fact that if once you've entered it and you move from the penny, the rounding factor goes up and it takes the first $10, the first $11, $12, $13, and we've applied that matrix all the way up through in order, at the end of the day, you're going to see the gross profit on it. So in addition to that, we have the ability to put an additional margin onto items as you create them, so that you can say, I need an additional 2% margin above and beyond, and that's what's going to pay for the software, my printer, the paper, the new paper, brand new fresh paper that's never gone through. And at the end result, the dollars equal as close as anything I have seen to the algorithmic calculator that Kelly is demonstrating. And Kelly, is that going to be something that you're sharing with the group tonight?
Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. Everybody's getting a copy of this. You know what? If what you do is have this as an Excel spreadsheet on your computer, and I've shown shops, they go, it's too much work. Take this, just pull it up. How long does it take for you? I don't want to say click, 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 but if it is a $125 part and you're selling it for $240 and your shop management system said $212, sell it for $240. And again, if you've got a better warranty than other people, premium quality part, people don't deal with you because of your prices. Most people don't. They deal with you because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. That's why they deal with you. It's not about your part. Oh, there's some people that say it's cheaper online, and we don't have time to get into that in this 2-hour session, but I am going to send you 2 articles, one on loyalty and why it's important, and another, and it doesn't matter who the part vendor is, be loyal with them. Find somebody that's good and be loyal. And secondly is the article on what do you say to somebody when I saw it on eBay and it was cheaper on eBay, or I saw it at a parts store cheaper than that. And some people say, well, you don't bring your eggs into a restaurant and ask them to cook them now, do you? Which is true, but I think it's rude. I think the reason we do that is because we truly don't know how to sell it. Now what I want to do is one last spreadsheet I want to show you. And Susan online here was just starting to use this particular spreadsheet. Susan was in a management group that I had years ago. A fellow took over that group after I had my accident, was doing some recovery, so I wasn't able to travel like I was. And so he took over the group, and his composite was good, but it wasn't great. And by the way, what we did with this matrix is we took something good and we made it great. We took something of a matrix that was working. It helped a lot, but it wasn't as good as this in the sense we put this thing on steroids. And so we took something good and basically turned it into great. Let me show you what I believe is what you ultimately should know about your shop. And I'm just looking for earlier today, if you were to listen to the recording. Am I tiling right now, Kevin?
Oh, your audio. I was about to tell you that your audio was great. So and still good. It's really good.
Okay, but I had
handsome bugger. Happy birthday.
Which handsome guy?
Yeah, the dark-haired guy. Not that silver-haired guy.
You're supposed to say he doesn't look 55. You wouldn't believe how many times I've had people say, "How old are you?" 50. Oh, you dye your hair, right? No, I don't dye my hair. Oh, seriously? You mean you got to dye your hair? I do not dye my hair. I want to show you what I think is what we absolutely should know. And again, 2 things we're looking at here. People who consist.
I'm sorry, Kelly. With your monitor, we're seeing. We're not seeing what you're sharing right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm pulling it up, sir.
Okay, sorry.
What happened earlier is I had way too many. Excuse me. I had way too many spreadsheets open, and that's what was causing the problem. I'm quite certain of that. So now I can share this with you. For those of you that took training from me way back in the 90s, you remember, and I don't talk while I'm moving this. Because it takes up so much bandwidth that it starts to tile. But I used to always turn off my overhead projector between slides because I just found it was distracting, and I didn't like people seeing it flip on and off. So I would turn it on and off all day, and some people make fun of that, but I just thought it looked smoother. Anyway, this is the information I believe that you should know every single month ultimately. What I showed you earlier, their income statement analysis tool, is really good. It's a good place to start. Some people are not there yet. Some people are getting there. Some people are beyond that. So everybody's at a different level, and I need to teach it 3 different ways, right? This is ultimately what I believe that you should be at. And I shared this with Susan, who's online, and her husband, Andy, who now have 2 shops and apparently sleep in their sauna. But it's too funny. Can't make this stuff up. But one of the things that composite didn't do, it was a good composite. The one that I used in the U.S. Initially with WorldPack was good. It wasn't great. The one we used in Canada was pretty good, but not great. I saw this one and I bought it because this was the cat's meow. I hate that expression, but this was it. And what I love about it is when you start to plug in your numbers, you start to see the trending month after month after month after month. You're looking at a real shop. This is 2011 first quarter. And what we're seeing is January, February. So you see that they had in January 45 new customers, then 45, 35, 47, 52, 56. I don't know what they did in August, but 64 new customers. I'd want to know, how did you do that? Quick ratio, we don't get into that. By the way, I just put together a 5-part financial management series. It's a webinar series. I'm going to send you the information. I'm not going to do a commercial here for it. I'm going to send it to you. If you really want to understand better about the balance sheet and cash flow, and I demonstrate how this spreadsheet works, and you get the spreadsheet with it, I'll send you that. But this is also the one we use in our management group. And what I love, and Susan mentioned it, is that in the old composite, you were seeing 1 month at a time, and that's okay. But to see all of this data right there, where you see your quick ratio acid test, all of this information you see here in beige or whatever color you happen to see there, you fill the data in there, and these little red things you just click on, it tells you what goes in their standard spreadsheet. But it starts to calculate for you. Repair orders per day, 9.35, so you're seeing car count. Average dollars per repair order, this is a real shop, 539, 474. Average labor dollars per repair order, we like to track that. Sold hours per repair order, the average shop is at 1.1 to 1.2. The shop 2.87, 2.66. Look at that. It doesn't seem that much of a difference in dollars, but look at that. We went from 2.87 to 3.18, minuscule, and went from $47,000 in sales to $58,000 in sales, and less repair orders per day. I eat this stuff up. Less repair orders per day, higher invoice by from 2.66 to 3.18, and we see an extra $9,000. I never noticed that. I get addicted to this stuff. Anyway, here's my point about the effective labor rate. This shop says their labor rate's 89, but what you say your labor rate is and what your labor rate is not the same thing. You want to be able to collect what you say you charge in an hour. So when somebody recently was in a class, and by the way, that lady with that stupid low labor rate in Ottawa, by the way, Kevin, I think I forwarded you her email. She said, I'm the one that had the lowest labor rate in the class, and I went up $5, and nobody noticed, so I might go up another $5. Just do 10 at once and move on, right? But that fear that stops people from doing that. But what hurts me, because I love what I do and I want to see people do better, is I know that if a person's labor rate's 85, it's not 85. It's probably closer to 60. And if a person says they're 100, they're probably not at 100. They're really at 67.50. If you really want to collect 100, your labor rate needs to be about 136, because when you're doing an oil change, it's not there. And you're not going to get the effective labor rate up in an oil change. But when you have a higher diagnostic rate, when your efficiency is higher, you're doing more maintenance, you're beating the time, you've got all these resources, that's the how to get there part. That's when the dollars start to change. And like Susan said, and I appreciated it, Susan, because as a person who's had passion for effective labor rate, I know a guy that took over for the group for me when I went to the US, and he said he's good, but he doesn't talk about effective labor rate, and we really need to hone in on that. And we go through an exercise on what do you do to increase your effective labor rate, which is the fixes. But this shop's labor rate, $89, okay? The effective labor rate, and I'm a percentage guy. We talk about percentages more than we talk about dollars. So this shop in January said their labor rate was 89, but they were collecting $80.88, or 90.87%. In February, it was 89, March, 93%, April, 96%, 93, 93, 98. And look what he was able to do. Slowly but surely getting the effective labor rate up and up and up. Now, it's not absolutely everything, but it is the most important calculation because it factors in productivity, efficiency, discounts, slow technicians, underestimating, giving stuff away. Everything comes down to, yeah, what did you collect per hour? You sold 8 hours today, but at $67 on average instead of 100. When that effective labor rate gets up, that's where the money is. And I appreciate your honesty, Susan, the ability to pay your bills. And this fellow who this week, and understand I take this stuff so personally. Here's a guy, 30 years in the business. He's been running his shop as long as I've been training now. Think about it. And he said, I can't pay my credit card bill from January. And I thought, your labor rate, I knew was low. He was in the class. He was afraid to go up. Nice man. Oh, wonderful, wonderful man. And I said, sir, you got to stop running a charity. This is not a charity. This is a business. and his son's working for him now, and his son's wanting to make changes, and he doesn't want him to do that because what if people go away? Well, you're working and not making money, so let's start to make some money, and guess what? The customers don't even pay attention to that. They know you, they like you, and they trust you. Another extremely important calculation is the labor to parts ratio. And that is what percentage of the money that came in the door came from labor compared to parts. And as I mentioned, 100% of the people who joined our group, 100% had more money from parts and labor. I saw one shop, I remember it well, in Listowel, Ontario, $2.47 in parts for every dollar in labor. I mean, it really hurt because wonderful people. I mean, nice people. But they were almost giving away the farm. They said, well, you know, you make money in parts. You don't really need to charge them the labor. My goodness, I thought. And you know what? Their parts gross profit was in the 30s. So the problem's even worse than they see. Because if they went back and put in the parts matrix, for example, Kevin, the one we just looked at, and they got their parts GP up to 50%, guess what? They're even more upside down on the labor to parts ratio because now they're probably $3 in parts for every dollar in labor. But that's the cool thing. When you're trending this stuff, you see my labor to parts ratio is going up, my labor gross profit's going up, and then you start to see something else. And sometimes you can't see one problem until you fix another. For example, if you get your efficiency up and your techs become faster and faster and faster, guess what? Your productivity comes down because it's harder to keep fast techs busy. So if they're getting faster and you're thinking, oh, I need to get better at what I'm doing. And I've had people say, well, my efficiency's up, but my productivity's down. Expect that. Who's harder to keep busy, a fast tech or a slow tech? Slow techs keep themselves busy. You've ordered the parts for the next 5 jobs and they're still working on that car. Fast techs, hey, I'm done. Done? Completely done? Like done? Okay, so have a coffee and I'm just going to get this next job estimated and sold. And that's the fun part of it, is they get better, you get better. They get better, you get better. And at the end of the day, it's where were we at with productivity? Where were we at with efficiency? And I believe we should be sharing this information. You need to be able to track not only hours sold in a day, but how did we get there? What was our productivity? What was our efficiency? If you said, what are the 3 most important things? Productivity, efficiency, and effective labor rate. All this other stuff's important, yes. Anyway, bottom line, you fix one thing, and then you start to see some other problems that you couldn't see. One quick story, because stories work. I had a fellow, his name's Jim, and Susan, I think you know Jim. He was a 3rd-generation shop. He took over from his dad, who took over from his dad. His daughter actually started working for him, and she quit and went someplace else. I'm not exactly sure why. Not quite 4th generation yet. But we're in the group and we have this composite, not like this one. This one is far superior, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I did not write this. I saw this guy who's a management trainer like myself. He showed me his composite. We were on a ferry boat from Vancouver Island to Vancouver. I thought, yeah, I know you want to show me your composite. I've seen like 7 or 8. We're sitting on the ferry. He's showing me this and I'm drooling thinking I want to buy this, and I did. And it works extremely well. Anyway, back to Jim. He said, Kelly, I don't think you're on your game here with this. He said, you teach stuff. He's a guy that has over 1,000 pre-booked appointments. It seems to me, Susan, that you had your advisor go to his shop to learn how to do that. Somebody from that group was having a hard time pre-booking appointments, and Jim's shop was the king of it. So somebody had their advisor go to his shop. I don't remember who it was. And they stayed there the whole day to learn how to pre-book appointments. And the cool thing about management groups, by the way, you saw it, Susan, those of you, Howard, you were in a group, maybe still are, I hope so. Everybody's king or queen of something. You might have the highest hours per repair order, somebody has the highest effective labor rate, somebody else has the highest GP on labor, somebody else has the highest labor mix, and then you think, oh, how did you do that? And they teach you. And then they go, how did you do what you do? And then you teach them, and we get better, and we get better, and we get better because we work together as a team. Anyway, labor to parts ratio. Jim said, Kelly, he said, I really like what you teach, and I'm pre-booking appointments, and all this stuff's going great, and the shop's running really, really well, but he said, I've looked back at my dad's financials and his dad's financials, and we have never once, ever in 1 month seen labor sales exceed part sales. It's never, ever happened. And he was in our management groups, we have a way to share emails within a group process. And I saw him actually write an email to somebody and say, yeah, it's off, we're off for the summer now. And he said, really like what we've learned this year. It's kind of like the end of the year. And he said, but Kelly's a little out to lunch on that labor to parts ratio. And he reiterated that not one time had it ever been higher in labor. In September, Jim sends me an email and goes, you're not going to believe this, but for the first time in our history, our labor sales exceeded our part sales. And that was like 6 years ago, and it's been that way every single month since. When you focus on selling the labor and you go from selling 5 hours a day to 6 hours a day to 7 hours a day, and your effective labor rate increases and it increases and increases, the next thing you know, your labor sales, you sell labor without parts. Hardly ever do you sell parts without labor. Labor should be the most amount of money. You know what the bottom line is? It's easier to give away time than it is to give away a part. You're not going to give somebody an alternator, but you might give 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. I will ask people in a shop, how much free work have you done? How much time have you spent diagnosing a vehicle that you didn't charge the customer? Anyway, take a look at this shop. He's not the king by any stretch. $1.09, $109.73, almost 110%. Effective labor, labor to parts ratio, 109% there. Our benchmark is 135, just so you know. Now, I don't want to go into all the detail with this, but that's a lot of data.
You could talk and it wouldn't,
that's a lot of
data. You're going.
That's a lot of data. I wasn't talking because I know it tiles too much and I don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
But what I love about this, and I think maybe one of my favorite lines, I've got a lot of favorites, but is you ever have a month and you think, oh, we didn't do so well this month, and you're discouraged, and you look at this month compared to this month last year and you think we're up last year. By the time we figure some of that stuff out, it all changes anyway. And the weather was different this year, and December was great, but January was bad, but February, and we look sometimes at too small of a picture. What I love about this is you see the net the profit year to date. 19,000 they made in January. February they're up to 30,000, 53,000, 60,000, 68. So maybe you have a bad month and it was worse than the month before. But you look at it and you go, wow, okay, like look at this month. They did 38,000 and 40,000. Well, you might get discouraged, but you go, well, you know what? I'm up 85,000 in profits so far this year. So to be able to track that is absolutely fantastic. One last thing I want to show you, then I just briefly want to talk about the management groups. Kevin, you want to interject anything?
No, just that I hope you show the side-by-side comparisons so that we can create a little fun. We can get a gym membership. You know, Kelly and I were talking about it, and one of the things that, you know, with the management groups and being able to see your numbers is that the more we share and become transparent, the more we all benefit. And that's inclusive of all of us. I mean, if you have somebody, to elevate the industry, we got to stop eating our own, right? We're going to bring on technicians, we're going to pay them a competitive rate, and we're going to teach them, elevate them, and have them understand they have to be efficient, they have to be effective, and we have to give them the tools to do that. So with the stuff that Kelly is showing here, I mean, for me, it's just, I see it time and time again. I mean, it's going to be so simple to implement. It's a matter of, okay, here's the formula. I love he's breaking it down to the simplest. GPS. Kelly, I think the next slide is just going to nail it, and it's going to explain it to everybody that here's the tools, take the lessons.
Okay,
Let's see how you stack up.
Thank you. You know what? This is challenging because I want to teach so much, and you know, there's only so much you can do in a couple hours. But I mean, I teach some classes that are 5 days long, and there's just so much to learn, and that's the beauty of it. We're always learning and learning and learning. I mean, look at a spreadsheet, Kevin. I was showing you stuff today on a spreadsheet I've been using for a long time, and thinking, oh, look at this and look at this. You can calculate your technicians' wages on there. I looked at that today. You can calculate so many things with that one spreadsheet. It's one thing to be able to see where you're at. We talk about GPS. Where are you at? Where should you be? How do you get there? That's what training's for. That's what the training is to be able to get there. How do I do this? How do I do this? And you learn from each other. Then you take it to the next level and see month after month after month after month after month, and you can see you're trending. I'm going in the right direction here, but I'm going in the wrong direction there, so let's make sure we fix this. Then you fix that, and you think, oh my goodness, this is starting to, and that's the fun part. Kevin, I've seen people go from not understanding their numbers to loving their numbers and eating the stuff up and going, let me tell you, this kind of stuff can become addictive. And I'm going to encourage you not to try to do the stuff at the shop. Take away from the shop, go away from the shop, go to your sauna at home, try not to fall asleep, and take your laptop there and do stuff away. The average manager is interrupted 232 times a day at work. That's not the place to get work done. If you don't have a private office there, go away, go to Starbucks, whatever it is, and get time away. My best thinking is not in a classroom. My best thinking, honestly, and of the 80 articles, well, over 100 articles that I wrote over the years were on airplanes. I am a social person, but outside of that, I am an introvert like you wouldn't believe. When I am on an airplane, I don't talk to people. I learned it from Bob. He said, if they talk to you, grunt. I love Bob. Just grunt at them and they'll stop talking to you. And but that's when I put my headset on and I write and I think and I get creative, because in the midst of the chaos at work, you can't come up with this kind of creativity. So it's one thing to see where you're at. Then, and ISAT, that tool that I showed you, and some of you, you're past that. Some people, that's something new to you. Then you start to do that. Then you get it to where you see month after month after month. The next step is when you compare yourself to somebody else. Now you think you're doing well, like the guy from Cochrane who goes to the meeting and goes, I am doing as good as the poster child with 5 texts, and he's got 2. All of a sudden he said, I was deflated. He said, I left there deflated, thinking, oh, well, our numbers are the same. I'd rather do it with 2 technicians than 5. Now he's got 7, by the way, and he's probably doing the sales of 3 or 4. He doesn't have time to go to training. He's been threatening to go. Anyway, back to this. He never did join that group, by the way. Anyway, now you're comparing your shop to others, and these are real shops. These are, Howard, you're online. You've seen this composite in the group. I suspect you're still in the group using one similar to this. Anyway, now you're looking at, you have 71 new customers this month. This person obviously didn't fill in that portion of it. This person had 32 new customers that month. Not everybody filled that in. This person had 43. Receivables, that's interesting to track. Look at that shop. Some of the nicest people that you ever did know that do work for people, and people say, I can't really afford to pay you, pay me later, and they got $22,000, almost $23,000 in receivables. Boy, did we beat him up. I suspect he's got that fixed. Total paid hours technicians, how are you doing compared to other shops? Repair orders, appointments pre-booked. This shop started getting on the bandwagon. That month they have 10 pre-booked appointments. The shop had 12. So now everybody wants to be able to beat that shop in the next meeting. We meet once a month and share this data. Average dollars per repair order, how are you doing there? Just so you know, this is a real shop, number 4, but he's in California and he's part of the SMOG program and the licensing program. So it's get it in, get it out, get it in, get it out, get it in, get it out. But it seems to be working for him because he's got $70,000 in sales. But you got this guy who's doing it the different way, and he's got 3 hours per repair order. And again, this is fascinating stuff. This guy is selling 3 hours in RO and does $75,000. And this guy over here is 1 hour per repair order, and he chooses to be in the SMOG program or the Air Clean program or the Drive Clean in Ontario, or Air Care in BC is no longer there actually now. But then you start to see that maybe there's an easier way to make this happen. And by the way, you know, I'm just looking at these numbers right now in a different light. I mean, here's a shop that sells more in labor than parts. This shop here sells more labor than parts. I didn't do this intentionally, trust me. This shop sells more labor than parts. This one here is a SMOG program, so it's almost all labor. Here's one shop that's upside down. This shop's a little bit upside down. Actually, this shop's doing pretty good with that. Anyway, then you see all 147 lines of data. And now you're comparing, where am I at, where is everybody else at? So 2 things. 1, if you're not on your numbers, get on your numbers, learn everything you can about the numbers. I'm going to be loading up your email. I'm going to send a copy of the software, or this webinar to you. This particular software, of course, is for our group. I'm not able to send this out, but you get the idea that ultimately, yes, we want to start with ISAT, but this is the kind of stuff we want to see. And by the way, one thing I really, really like about this is it breaks it down not by alphabetical. Most financial statements like QuickBooks will break down your expenses by alphabet. Well, there's no benchmark for A, benchmark for C, benchmark for D. What this does is it breaks down your expenses, your facility expenses, and all the things that go along with that. Then your total facility expenses. We see how much went into the facility and the percentage of that. Vehicle expense, what did we pay for our total vehicles? Financial expense, amortization, depreciation, Visa, MasterCard discounts. What was your total financial expense of your sales and the percentage? Administrative expenses, owner salaries, management salaries, bookkeeping, service advisor, office admin. How much went specifically to the admin and what percentage of sales? I like what happened with marketing here. How much do we spend on bringing in new customers? How much do we spend on client database marketing, getting people back? Total marketing expenses and the percentage. And then, of course, we're seeing the net profit per day to date. So last thing, I just want to quickly show you our group format. And again, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we end on time. But we will certainly go on with questions as long as the questions last.
Kelly, I just one thing. You went through you showed the composite, but also competitively, are you going to talk about the other sheet, or is that later?
Okay.
The service advisor sheet. Are you going to? That was 102 lines of data that you just put through there.
Okay. Thank you. What I did, another idea, was, in our groups, one of the things that I didn't like happening was it was the owners group, the managers group, and the advisors. Well, they actually wouldn't even like you going to classes because you come back from a management group and we're changing this and we're changing that, and all you want to do is change, change, change. And sorry, I just see a cute email from somebody that was in the class. Anyway, but the service advisors weren't really involved. And yet, how much does a service advisor have an impact on sales, cost of goods sold, effective labor rate, all of those kinds of things? So I wanted to be able to share this. Thank you for bringing that up, Kevin. And that is for the service advisor to see their own composite. Now, you probably don't want your service advisor to see what your salary is and what your net profit is and all of those kinds of things. So what I did is I created a service advisor's version of this. These are the things that I believe an advisor should see. And it ends down here with gross margin because they control everything above there. So now the service advisor every month gets their own composite so they can see their trend. How am I doing with repair orders in a day? How am I doing with average sold hours per repair order because they're doing the selling? How am I doing with sold hours per repair order? How am I doing with effective labor? How am I doing in these areas? And then the service advisors in our groups are also part of the group. So now they get a composite every month. They do this on their own. They see the data right away. And that's another thing I like about this composite is when you enter your data, you're seeing your numbers right now. Whereas before, they'd send the data in, come back as a PDF. If there was a mistake, you go, oh, but that's wrong. It's too late. It's 2 months old now. Now, with this, you're entering your own data. You put it in, you put it in. And by the way, I have a webinar that teaches you just how to do this. So when you join a group, the only prerequisite is you watch all 5 videos on financial management. So everybody is singing from the same song sheet. So everybody understands the same thing, so we don't repeat and repeat and repeat every time somebody new comes to a group, which has been a big problem with every group that I've seen, is we spend too much time with the new people. With webinars now, we don't have to. You want to learn about the composite? Watch the webinar. You want to learn about balance sheet? Watch the webinar. You want to learn about selling? Watch the webinar. You want to learn about productivity? Because the members get access to all of the webinars that we have and all the new ones coming. Anyway, so now the advisor is seeing how they're doing. Now, I'm not going to pull up another one, but instead of January, February, March, April, for your own shop, now we're seeing one shop, another shop, another shop, and another shop. And by the way, some people think, well, how can I be in a group when somebody has 7 technicians and I have 5? Or they're in California, the labor rate's $128 an hour and mine's $96. It doesn't matter. I've taught in all 50 states. I've been to all 50 states. It's been a really neat career. I've been all across Canada and all across the U.S. The numbers are the same. The benchmarks are the same. The numbers change. Some people have $138 an hour labor rate, but they're paying $40 an hour for a technician, and their rent is astronomical, whereas I see some people, and I'm laughing at what they pay for rent compared to somebody else, but the benchmarks are the same. It's about percentages. It's not dollars. We teach you manage your business by percentage, not by dollars. Who cares what your sales are? You've got 7 techs, same thing with Errol. Now what came down to it, the guy that I mentioned who was doing the same numbers with 5 as the other guy 2, it comes down to sales per technician per month. One guy that was in that group came to the meeting as a test drive, and I saw him sitting there, and I could see his peacock feathers are coming out, and he's so proud of what he's doing, and I thought, you have no idea what's coming. We're going to eat you alive. I didn't say that. Somebody else did. And he was the guy that had that massive amount of money in accounts receivable, way too nice. But he was doing, and I'm not exaggerating, about $18,000 a month per tech. It's not about sales now. It's about sales per tech. And he saw somebody else in the group doing $38,000 a month, and he's going, what am I doing wrong? So he went from thinking, I got more techs than you do, and you've got more money than I do. What are you doing differently? And he actually went back, got rid of some dead weight that he should have got rid of a long time ago. He'd never fired an employee, needed to. Sometimes that's a tough thing to do. Well, maybe your group members can help you with those kinds of things. Anyway, enough of that. This is the Service Advisor Composite. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, one last thing I want to show you, and that is about the group itself and how the group works. And I got to get right to the proper place. We call this team, and we are launching the group. Got back to Bob somehow there. He still won't leave me alone. I wish Bob was watching this. He'd be quite proud, I'm sure. He taught me well. Anyway, team membership benefits. It's a management group that we meet regularly. There's a bi-weekly, I should say, owner-manager meeting online. So twice a month, you actually, for an hour and a half, come online like we're doing right now. Once we, one of the meetings we review the composite, and then the other one we do some training as it relates to what we see in the composite. So if we see that we need to focus on increasing effective labor rate, we'll notice that in the composite. 2 weeks later, we're going to do some training specifically on that, and you get input and say, hey, here's what I'd like training on. Somebody mentioned earlier, I need to increase my car count. Well, let's focus on that. Now, next time we need to make every car count. And by the way, I really love this idea more so than a group, and I'm not saying it's bad, but to go to a meeting 3 times a year for 3 days is a marathon for 3 days. This is more or less a series of sprints, and each week you're getting that information. By the way, the shop that you were talking about, I believe it was $399 a month, just for the record. But if you do the math with a 4-year commitment of $400 a week, I should say, that's some serious dollars. And I know some people, in fact, just to be honest with you, to be candid, I was approached by one of those 2 major companies in the U.S. That have a workshop that's $300 to get in, $40,000 to get out of the door. And, you know, some people do something for free and then it's just this, you know, $40,000, $50,000. I know people literally who have spent, and I don't exaggerate things, $50,000, $60,000 with some of these companies. And I was doing some training years ago in Philadelphia, and they had flown somebody in from one of these companies to watch me teach for the day. And I knew he was there. He introduced himself at the beginning. And when we were done, he wanted to know if we can go for dinner. I said, actually, I've got a flight that I need. He said, well, we want to hire you. And I said, no. And he said, no, seriously, we want you to do our training. I said, I don't do commercials. I'm not going to stand up in front of a group of people and teach them good stuff. I'm not saying it's not good stuff, but we don't have to spend 40 or 50 or 60. There's probably some people listening to this that know the companies that I'm talking about. I don't want to badmouth them other than the fact that the stuff works. It's just I couldn't sleep at night if people were spending huge amounts of money. But what you're really getting is some training. That you mentioned that guy had to travel to California for 10 days in a row. And I'm not exaggerating. They don't even feed you in these meetings, okay? So it's the travel cost, the airfare, all of that kind of stuff. And any group, if you're going to travel around, it's fine to do that once in a while. It's not a bad thing. But when you're doing it on a regular basis, it gets pretty expensive. And then there's people in smaller communities that have to drive 3 hours just to get to an airport to fly to the city, and they just won't do it. And it's just too much money and too time consuming. So the idea of a weekly meeting, I think, is a better approach than doing something where you're going off to a 3-day course. We have a 5-day course. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's great. But I think I would rather bite-size it so that you can implement better than going back with a binder that's 2 inches full of material and you're trying to go through unless you organize it and prioritize what you're going to do. Anyway, the bi-weekly owner meetings, they're always on the same day of the week at the exact same time, so you never have to wonder what day it is. We also have monthly one-on-one coaching. And I know a particular fellow in Toronto who I mentioned briefly, maybe he's online, I don't know. He's taken, I think, more training than anybody else. And I believe wholeheartedly that what he could benefit from better is one-on-one coaching, a phone call once a week. How are you doing here? You said you were going to do this. We all have to be held accountable. It's like being your own workout person. Some people do okay with it, but some people do better when they have a workout buddy and they push each other and they push each other. And I have my own coaches. I've got mentors. I've got people I learn from. Anyway, monthly one-on-one coaching. Just so you know, once a month you have a live meeting with me, and once a month you have a meeting with Kevin. So literally every week a meeting is going on for an hour to an hour and a half, and you get coaching. It could be about your composite. It could be about an employee issue that you're trying to deal with. It could be about all sorts of different things. Just so you know, you have also, as a group member, access to all of the current sessions that I have online. It actually says 12 here. There's actually now, I think, 17. The comprehensive financial analysis tool that I just showed you. We also we complete the work on the group composite. One of the roles that Kevin has is going to be building the monthly composite for you. We have the tools, the spreadsheets, the forms. I've shown you some of those. Many of those I'm sending to you. I can't send the spreadsheet because the composite, that is really a group thing, but all the other spreadsheets that I showed you, I'm going to be sending to you after this class. One thing that we do, and there's another group, and by the way, when I'm talking about those two companies in the US, I want to make clear I am not talking about Elite. Elite is a different company. They do some great things. I'm not talking about them. They are in the composite business, the group business, not the training business per se. And the other two companies that I mentioned are not groups. They are training companies with coaching, okay? Elite, that's what they do. They do online sessions like we do, and they have a live meeting. I believe it's once a year, and I know people personally who are in that group. I think somebody online is actually in that group still, or was. So there's a live meeting once a year, and so what we're going to do is once a year, we'll call it a summit. When I had the training with Worldpac in the US, we had a group in Seattle, one in San Francisco, one in Nevada, one in Denver, and I can't remember the other place. And once a year, we'd all meet at the headquarters for Worldpac in Newark, New Jersey. Not everybody could make the trip. Most people would. And now you get to meet these people face to face that you've talked to online and got to know online. So that's included in that. Online manager group. We have a group online where you share financial information, data. That's where you get your composite. And so you see something, you think, oh, my technician created this amazing form for inspections. You upload that to the group. Everybody in the group gets an email that says, Kevin uploaded this file, and you go there and think, oh, that's pretty cool, Kevin. Or if somebody says, I've got this neat thing that I use on the counter, getting information from my customers, well, upload it to the group. So now we've got a group of people that are working together and sharing all the information. You get, you give, it's the way it works. We also have one for advisors. I've created a group online where advisors can do the same thing. They see a tool, they like it, they say, here, everybody, this is what I found. What do you use? What do I use? Hey, maybe we should combine your form with my form, and let's put it together and create it, and it now becomes property of the group. Now, one thing I should have mentioned here, and I believe it's not here, I'm sorry, is that once a month, there's a meeting for the advisors. So your advisor, if you're in the group, your advisor once a month would go online just like this, and we'd look at the composite for just the advisors. We don't show them the financial data for management. We just look at the service advisor composite that I showed you. It's not information that I think a service advisor should not see. And now it's better, I believe, because the advisor is part of the group. Instead of you saying, I'm going on my group meeting, they're saying to you once a month, I'm doing my online meeting, and I want to see if I beat Susan in hours per repair because she was the queen last time, and I want to be able to beat her there, and I did, but somebody else beat me here, and you think, oh, and it becomes fun, and it becomes competitive. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but just so you know, this is not a group just for owners and managers. We involve the advisors by having their own meeting once a month, their own online group, and I'll tell you, we keep it separate from the manager group. There are times, and I'm just being honest with you, there are times where somebody has to talk about what it's like to work someplace and some of the issues they're dealing with, and maybe somebody else can help them deal with somebody's way of, leadership and maybe not treating them correctly. There are times, for example, let me give you an example. When I'm training and owners and managers are there, many times, especially time management, I'll have people say, oh, this is great, but there's no way my techs will do it. Okay, so let's bring your techs in. And some of you know about the session we had called the Technician Time Management for Employees. And I'd bring the employees in, and it would be no owners. The owners were not allowed to be there. Now, if you had not seen the information yourself, yes, you could be there. But if you'd already taken that, and now we're doing the employee, because I'd say, what are your biggest beefs at work? And they go on and on and on, some legitimate beefs that the techs have. And so let's solve those. Most people don't like change. But if we don't change, we keep all these problems that we just talked about. So let's go through some material that's going to require change. But if we don't change, we stay there, and we're like the gerbil going around and around and around. And I tell you, as a trainer from my 30 years experience, I get a better sense of how the shop is actually doing from the employees more so than the shop owners and managers, because it's the ego kicks in, and I'm doing well here and I'm doing well there, and then I'm not. It's a good thing. I'm just saying from my experience, it's a great thing. It doesn't become I don't want to use the word bitch session, but that's what some people think about. It's not like that at all. There are times where, as an employee, we need to say, hey, how do I deal with approaching my boss about this? How do I deal when I say, no, Mr. Customer, we're full today, and my boss goes, oh yeah, bring it in. How's it, my boss wants to talk to the customer because they're all friends, and how do I deal with that? And the customer doesn't want to talk to me anymore, and they want to talk to that person. Anyway, so that's what that's about. The group benefits, as I mentioned, is the owners every month. We don't need to go to that in detail. I already talked about the monthly online coaching. Online sessions, I've been recording a huge amount of online training. I have a session online. These are all 90 minutes to 2 hours. One's called Manage Better 2017. Improved operations for improved profits, how to get better at technician time management, productivity, efficiency, improved communications, how many problems are caused at your shop because of a lack of, that says customs, that's customers, advisors, and technicians. Another workshop called Drastically Increase Your Diagnostic Labor Sales. One that's almost like a Hollywood production. Some of you have seen it. It was recorded by a Canadian technician in a green screen studio with props and everything, very, very well done, called 65 Ways to Increase Car Count. That's about a 2.5 hour session. I put together one called Mastering Scheduling and how to pre-book appointments and get really good at that. Some of you have seen that before, and I've learned a ton of stuff in the last 9 months that I wish I knew years ago. But, by the way, Kevin, I look back at the first class I did, and I thought, wow, was I ever a rookie? And I look back even a couple of years ago and think, wow, I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. And you need to. That's what makes life interesting. Tune Up Your Profits, another workshop, Service Advisor Selling Skills, Service Advisor Essentials, which is basically what the KPIs should be for a service advisor. 10 through 15 is the 5-part financial management 5-part series where I go through and start with chart of accounts and the income statement analysis tool, and then we get into more KPIs in the next section. Then we take a look at 22 KPIs. Back to the GPS, where are you? We'll show you how to calculate that. Where should you be? And then we go step by step, each of those 22 things. That's the session you saw me teach in Ottawa, Kevin. And we go, okay, you're here. You need to get there. What do? You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and you'll get better at that. We go on to the next one. Where are you? Where should you be? How do you get there? Let's talk about how you get there. It's not good enough just to have your GPS say, oh, you want to go there? Don't know how to get there, but you should be there. Anyway, then we get into things like cash flow analysis, which a lot of people are not that familiar with, and balance sheet information, which is critical. And then there's a session in there that teaches you how to fill in that whole 172-line composite. There's another session that I did with Mike Kelly, a counterpart of mine in BC, and our Kevin King. I call him Kevin the King. Kevin, again, you get me so pumped and motivated. I talk to you on the phone and I'm almost bouncing off the walls. Have you ever been around people that suck the life out of you? And Kevin, I love it when you say, Kelly, let's talk. And I've been there. I have phoned people and say, build me up, because I just talked to somebody who sucked the life right out of me. I think they're called Death Eaters or something like that. And then you get around somebody and all of a sudden you feel really good. I want to give you one analogy from a leadership, and it was about an election in the UK many years ago, and I apologize, I don't remember the two candidates, but there was a reporter who spent one night with Hillary and one night with Trump. Okay, I'm kidding, but she spent one night with one candidate and one night with the next candidate. And they said to her, how did you feel after you spent, the evening having dinner with that first candidate? She said, when I had dinner with him, she said, when we were done, I felt like he was the smartest person in all of England. And they said, what about the next night with the next candidate? She said, when I was finished having dinner with him, I felt like I was the smartest person in all of England. And I thought, what a difference between that and making somebody feel good about themselves. And I like when people leave something that they feel better about themselves than before. You can do that with emails and texts, and that's more of a personal development thing. But anyway, we put together this GemCar demo. If you don't have good shop management software, you want to see what it does, it's a session. It's actually a complimentary one. It's not included in what we're looking at here as far as the costs go. And I also have a short little one called How to Download Webinars to Your Computer. I'm going to be sending that out to you after this session as well. It's basically $1,400 worth of online training. You have the comprehensive financial analysis tool. Financial tools, I'm not going to read through that to you, but there's other software we haven't covered in here, and that's all included. There's two ways you can get this. You can buy the 5-part management series, the financial management. I'll send you the information. And if you become a group member, you get all of that information along with that. Then, of course, we have the 2-day live summit once a year. We choose that based on where most of the members are to reduce travel, although traveling sometimes is a very helpful thing. March 21, of course, was today. We talked about that. I just want to get into the last part of that, and that's this, that the groups are limited to 8 shops per group because we're doing it online and we're doing it in an hour and a half. We don't want to review the financial data for 12 shops or 15 shops or whatever. So they're definitely the smallest groups that you'll find out there. I think there's huge benefits of that. The only requirement, as I mentioned earlier, you must go through the 5-part financial management class. And just so you know, we're going to have a 21-question test so that you've done the training. Say, okay, before you join the group, what's this? What's the benchmark for that? What's this? We're not going to ask all the fixes, but we want to make sure that everybody's singing from the same song sheet. What I don't want is to be into a group a year and somebody goes, what's productivity? And spending the time on that. Now, once in a while, we have to revisit a subject. I'm not saying that, but sometimes we're repeating kindergarten again and again, and we really don't want to do that. You have to commit to having your financial data to us. And by the way, I submitted this composite to a large part company in Canada, my composite that I just showed you, and I was told it was too complicated. And I said, it has to be. If you sent them ISAT, and they go, why would I need this? Some people say, I've already got this information. It has to be something that's a stretch for them. She said, well, it's really complicated. And then I was told these people will never fill it in. And I said, let me tell you, I know Worldpac's a competitor of yours, but I want to tell you, and the people online can verify. In Seattle, we had 100% reporting within 3 months. In Denver, we had 100% reporting within 3 months. In Calvada, which was California and Nevada combined, we had 100% reporting. I don't make the stuff up. And if you're not good at something, because we're not good at everything, then now it's even better than it was then because you can watch the webinar. But also you can have other members and say, well, I'm having a hard time with line 62. What do I put in here? And people working together, it's a phenomenal thing. It's like everybody that's in your group is on your board of directors. The initial fee, just so you know, it was initially going to be $750. I've changed that. It's $330, and that gets you all of the webinars. So when you sign up for the group, I'll send you a link. You can register if you like, and you will, within 24 hours, get the link to every single webinar that we have online. You'll also receive all of the tools. Now, again, the ones that I showed you tonight, other than the composite, you're going to get all of those along with the recording of this class. And all we ask is a simple 60-day cancellation if you want to stop being in the group for whatever reason. So with that, we're done. I apologize. We went over. I did better this afternoon. I think the more you teach something, the harder it is to get it in a time frame because you learn and learn and learn. So Kevin, you want to add anything, sir? And by the way, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to try one thing here and unmute everybody and see how loud it gets. Not bad. Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions. Kevin, anything you want to add?
No, just that, Kelly, that I guess just to re-emphasize the fact that what we're talking about here is a gym membership, and let's make it fun. Let's get a gym buddy and go and help put serious dollars and help you kick butt and implement what you know you need to be doing. And we're willing to step up and say, look, we're going to help you. We're all going to pull in the same rope together. It's easier to pull, everybody pulling on the rope, than it is to push the rope in the opposite direction. So I'm excited to be part of it, and I really appreciate it.
Kevin, I can't think of anybody, seriously, that I'd rather do this. You inspire me, like just bouncing off the walls after some of our calls. Anyway, everybody's unmuted. Go ahead and ask any questions that you want. I tell you what I'm going to do, because it's sometimes intimidating for people. I'm going to stop the recording. So for those of you that are listening to the recording online, thank you very much. And my email, kelly@kellythecoach.com, and you're going to receive all of the spreadsheets. If you have any questions, please just email me, kelly@kellythecoach.com. You got an email with the link for this class. Anyway, so with that, go back, kick butt, and have fun too. Thanks.